Happy Sunday, everyone. In today's live, I'm going to talk about what all real estate developers do, because I've gotten a lot of just kind of one-on-one feedback with different people who think that I only work with like major developers. And I just kind of wanted to make it clear that that is not the case. I work with all types of developers, and so I wanted to hop on here just to clarify like how I see real estate development and what are like the three key tiers of real estate developers as far as I categorize them. So on one end, you have like the least amount of work that is involved, and then on the other end, you have the most amount of work that is involved. And so I see real estate development really encompasses that whole kind of range, but they're kind of, that range again is like literally chopped into three different sections. And I think that it's important to clarify with people that there are different ways to be a real estate developer. It's not just a matter of taking raw land and building a house on it. That's just one particular extreme, but it can also look like other things. And so let's start with that category. So on the highest tier of real estate development, you have developers who focus on taking like just raw land, raw dirt, and their main thing is actually doing ground up construction. Now, this type of real estate developer, honestly, they of course have the most capital out there because doing that type of work is very expensive. I mean, you have to put in utilities, you have to do surveys, site plans, plot plans, subdivisions, all these different things. And that's one type of developer that I think a lot of people understand. Like everybody gets that, okay, if someone buys land and puts a house on it, that's a developer. And that also too includes like, of course, the major developers who buy land and then build like apartment buildings or build office towers or build high-rise condos or something like that. So that's all a concept of real estate development that everyone is very familiar with. And so that's kind of the first one in that highest tier. So those are your ground up construction niches, as I like to call them. Then you have moving away from that, like that's very capital intensive and it's very work intensive because you're literally creating something from the ground. And so then moving kind of towards the middle of the spectrum, you have this very interesting, and I would say the largest form of real estate development actually is where people take existing structures and they actually reconfigure it and they reconstruct it in either new uses, or they completely gut different places and they completely convert the use. And just a couple of quick examples would be real estate developers in this niche do like the fun stuff. Like they'll take an old warehouse and then they'll convert it into work-live lofts. So they're not necessarily taking down an entire building and creating something new. They're taking an existing structure and just kind of transforming the use. And so this type of construction work, another example, like I've seen in the East Coast, this is very popular. They take churches and they convert them into apartment buildings. Here in California, it can be, the most common example is people take developers who focus within this category. They'll take single family homes and then they will add square footage, or they'll add ADUs, or they'll add guest houses, or they'll add additional units. So that's another type of like development, real estate development, where you're taking an existing structure and you're adding onto it, you're adding physical value there, or it can even look like taking a large single family house in Hollywood Hills, completely gutting it, and then making it perfect for a Hollywood celebrity. So that is all within that second category of real estate development. And I think that that's very important because this category, again, there's so much, I just listed off a few examples, but there are honestly like so many. Like there are examples of, oh my gosh, like taking old houses and turning them into restaurants and just outfitting them that way. On a residential level, it can look like taking, I think this is commonly what our clients do, is it will involve taking a single family house, completely gutting it, and then adding bedrooms and adding bathrooms and adding square footage and adding like a garage and adding all these different things to it, just building off of what's already there. This can also look like, I'm trying to think of another good example. What's another good example? Yeah, this can even look like, very common example that's very, in my own neighborhood of Pasadena, they're doing a lot of this. They're taking old office buildings and they're converting those into apartments. And then at the kind of the lower range of real estate development, you have flippers. So that's where you have, nothing is really changing as far as structurally, most of the changes are based on interior design, or they're based on aesthetics, and they're based on changing out carpet, paint, landscaping. It's the least capital intensive, it's the least work intensive, and usually this type of, it's very light construction. Like, you don't necessarily have to, it doesn't necessarily involve like bringing down all the walls in a house, versus something within that second category, you might be looking at bringing an entire house down to the studs. With flipping, of course, it's very simple and very kind of surface level. And I don't mean to say that flippantly, like there is definitely value in flipping, but typically that value is concentrated in higher dollar homes, especially like in Hollywood Hills, Sunset, like that kind of high ritzy area, Mar Vista, Santa Monica, and Venice. If you're able to do that on that area, and there's enough significant square footage there, then you might be able to get away with high value, high profit projects like that. However, what I've seen recently, now with this kind of range of real estate development on this like other end of the spectrum, before, I would say right after 2008, of course, this was very profitable. It was like where all the real estate development was focused, because there was a significant margin there and you didn't really have that much competition. And now I've definitely seen that change over time since then, and especially even today now. I honestly give my hat off to people who are staying within that flipping niche, because you have to be a machine to manage a business strictly within that flipping niche. And that's because, again, because you're not going outside of the physical characteristics of an existing structure, you kind of almost limit yourself to the amount of value that you can add or profit back once you do sell a development. So that was just a very kind of quick overview in terms of what all real estate developers can do. You have people and developers who focus on having just straight dirt and then constructing new buildings, whether it's single family, condos, office towers, warehouses, so on and so forth. And then in this huge middle area, you have real estate developers who do all sorts of activities that involve actually changing, like making changes to the physical structure that's already existing on a property, whether it's gutting a property, like turning it from commercial to residential, residential to industrial, industrial to work live. And then on the lower end of real estate development, have that core group of flippers, which I know is something that all of you are familiar with. That was a bit of a longer video, but I still think it's very important, because I guess the whole message here with this video is that with real estate development, there is not just one specific thing, and I don't want too many people to get the impression that I'm only talking about this one category. Whenever I make these videos, I'm referencing for the most part that category as well as category in the middle. And then when I refer to flippers, I'm referring to that last category, that kind of lower range, capital intensive, lower work intensive category. If that still doesn't make sense, please feel free to leave a comment down below. So with that, I will conclude this video. Thank you, Heidi, so much for watching, and until the next live, can't wait to see you guys